Hello! It's been a few weeks on YouTube because this is going on YouTube. Hope you're well. Um, Hope it's been busy and prosperous and we're all holding on in this mad, bendy, twisty world where strange things happen and strange thoughts occur. I want to do a brief video. I have another video to do on soul fragmentation. And it is coming. I just need to piece together in my own mind how to put it across in a way that's easily understandable. But today I wanted to do a quick video on telling the future. Now, in spiritualism, in spiritualist churches, we always say we can't predict the future. And you know, if you've ever been for a reading, I will say this: most mediums will predict the future. They may stand on a church rostrum and say, I won't predict the future, I'm not allowed to predict the future, I'm not allowed to diagnose or prescribe. But I think in private readings, most mediums can be accused of predicting the future at least once or twice. I certainly have. And on the rostrum, the rostrum being the platform that spiritualist mediums stand on during church services, you will hear a medium say, watch for a baby coming, watch for a wedding, watch for a new car, a new job, watch for a house move, watch for some money coming. Now, they're not massive predictions, but they are predictions nevertheless. I can't predict the future, but just remember that your grandma is mentioning a baby coming to the earth plane. You know, I'm not allowed to predict the future, but just watch where there is a marriage coming up around. I am not allowed to prescribe or predict or diagnose, but somebody is mentioning that there should be diabetes on the earth at the family, and if it's not known, it needs looking into. I mean, I just have to say, I mean that with the greatest of respect. I know it sounds like I'm being dismissive, but we do say a lot. We can't predict the future, we shouldn't predict the future, but in reality, most mediums stood on a platform predict the future almost every service, and I would be beholden to find one who hasn't said that in their lengthy or short careers. Mr. Higginson, Gordon Higginson, one of the greatest mediums of the last century, he made a video on a recording at Arthur Findlay College on the predictions of the future. And Mr. Higginson predicted the future a lot. I know we say we don't predict, but if you listen to lots of stories Mr. Higginson told, lots of things he said, he was definitely predicting the future. In one story that I was blessed to hear only recently, he walked past a lady in Arthur Findlay College during open week, and he stopped her and said, "You're going to have a baby boy." And at the time, she didn't know she was pregnant. And he said, "I will name that baby for you. You will come to me and I will name your son." Such as it is, that lady did fall pregnant. She did have a baby. He was a boy. And when she went to Arthur Findlay College to ask Mr. Higginson to name her son, Mr. Higginson had passed away. He had ascended into the higher realms. He nevertheless had left a note naming this baby boy. I would just say, in spiritualism, we don't have christenings or baptisms. We have naming ceremonies where we have a spiritual name. I've not had a naming ceremony, but my name, Jason, means healer. I take that to be spiritually given to me by my mother. He predicted the future in that instance, and he predicted the future in numerous other occasions, as did Emma Hardinge Britten, one of our greatest pioneers. Emma Hardinge was known as an oracle, as a seer, and as a prophetess. what is prophecy if not prediction of the future? Oracles and seers are predicting the future. Predictions of the future are not a new thing. They go back to the most ancient cultures in our societies. The Egyptians had magicians, magi. They had priests who claimed to be able to see into the ebbing flow of time. In Iran, what is or was ancient Persia, they had again magi. If you go into Africa, there are witch doctors and seers of all sorts of different descriptions, medicine men. In the Native American cultures, spirit walkers who would cast their eyes across the flow of time. The Vikings had skalders and vulvas who would tell stories of the ancient past and at the same time would throw down bones or runes, rub together sticks, predict the movement of the clouds and birds to give them a form of foresight. In the Greeks, and we won't go all around the world, but the Greeks had the great oracle of Delphi, blessed by the god Apollo. They have, in the Roman culture, the Syllabine oracle, books written long before the founding of Rome that details numerous events, and the Romans went back to the Syllabine oracle over and over in their history, even when they began to believe that the gods may not quite be as real as people wanted them to be. In the ancient story of Troy and its fall, thanks to Paris and Helen, Achilles, Hector, Agamemnon and Priam, there is one character who saw the fall of Troy. Her name was Cassandra. But because Cassandra had refused the advances of the god of the sun, Apollo, she had been cursed that her words would never be trusted. Mr. Higginson said, if a medium can truly connect with the spiritual world, if we can truly connect with God's divine mind, then who better to predict the future than a medium, a speaker, a spiritualist, somebody who can converse with powers greater and wiser than our own? I was doing a sit-in only recently, and a lady in the sit-in said, I read your previous reading, Jason, and it reads like Shakespeare. And I was like, oh, that's quite nice. She said, no, when I read it back, everything you have said and predicted has come to pass. But when I was reading it at the time, I couldn't make head nor tail of what you were trying to say. And I was like, oh, that's a bit dodgy. But then I wanted to make a point about why we do have to be careful predicting the future. And it is because the spirit world, removed from the material consciousness, does not necessarily speak in the way that we, as physical beings, find easy to interpret or understand. Quite often they will speak and predict literally, and it will be very literal. It will have very little room for error or tweaking. However, its perception, its interpretation may get lost in communication. I remember sitting in trance once upon a time, and I said to a lady as the energies came through, the spirit world have decided to send you to the city of 7 bridges. At the city of 7 bridges all will be made well. What I didn't know, they were talking about the city of Hamburg. I think it's Hamburg. A city that is made of 7 bridges, where 7 rivers converge and 7 bridges intersect the city. Another lady during prediction, I said the spirit world wish you to have a new house, a new home. They will bring you happiness and joy and the most powerful of medicines when the sunflowers bloom. She said, can you be more exact? I said, they say we cannot be more exact. On the day the sunflower blooms is the day you will change your home, you will be happier than you have ever been, and you will be healed beyond any power that this earth possesses. what I didn't know. That moving of house, that greatest of joy, that healing beyond any mortal power, was her transition into the spirit world. A new home, great joy, healing beyond compare when freed from the body. The sunflower that bloomed that day sat on my bedroom window, a flower known as brown-eyed girl, a sunflower bush. And as I woke up in the morning and saw this bush blossom her first flower of the year, a friend phoned me and said my friend Mrs. Key had passed away. The spirit do not speak quite as simply as we think, and what may be seen as one thing can be another thing. The first time I ever went to a spiritualist church, the first lady I ever spoke to and asked to sit with, she said, "You will not come to my church. You will not come to my church, but on the day that you do, I will be there." Anyway, when I went to go to spiritualist church, I had found out that the lady had died. And so I thought, well, you got that bloody prediction wrong, didn't you? Until somebody came to me in the circle that night and said, there is a lady here called Sheila. And I said, oh, I know Sheila. They said, I don't know why I'm supposed to tell you, but Sheila is stood on a hill. And the hill is very important. What the medium didn't know, and I did know, the lady named Sheila, whose church I had attended many years ago, who promised she would visit me on the very first day I'd ever attended a spiritual church, her name was Sheila Hill. Not Sheila on a hill, Sheila Hill. So she came, Sheila, with her hill stood underneath her, and gave a message. It was as literal as it could be, but interpreted slightly wrong. To touch on this Shakespearean element, let me be clever. We try and be clever. Let's just shrink this slightly. I just want to read something to you. And it goes back to this idea of your messages sound like Shakespeare. And I'll just shrink you there. So, think of that play. The play. That unspoken play that no actor likes to talk about before they do a gig. And there are 3 witches, and they have summoned a great spell, and Macbeth stands before them. And Macbeth asks them to give him guidance. And so the witches begin to make a series of predictions. And I'll try to do my best voice. Macbeth, 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 beware Macduff, beware the Thane of Fife, dismiss me, enough, descend. Easy enough? And Macbeth says, whatever thou art, for thy good caution thanks, thou hast harped my fear aright, but one word more. He accepts. Macduff, the Thane of Fife, is a dodgy man, and Macbeth needs to be careful, and will do something about it. Anyway, the witches go on, and another spirit appears. And the spirit says, Macbeth, 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 be bloody, bold and resolute, laugh to scorn the power of man, for none of woman born shall harm Macbeth. And Macbeth says, then live, Macduff, what need I fear of thee? But I shall make assurance double sure, and take a bond of fate, thou shalt not live, that I may tell pale-hearted fear it lies, and sleep in spite of thunder. Essentially, the witch says that no one who is born of a woman can ever hurt Macbeth. And Macbeth says, well, then I have nothing to worry about, do I? But I'll kill him anyway, just to be on the safe side. But then they say one more thing that makes Macbeth lose his sort of, let's be careful, careful, careful. They say, Macbeth, 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 be lion-mettled, proud, and take no care, who chafes, who frets, and where conspiracies are. Macbeth shall never be vanquished, be, until great Birnam wood to high Dunsinane hill doth come against. And Macbeth says, that shall never be, for who can impress the forest and bid the tree unfix his earthbound root? Sweet Bodement's good rebellious dead shall never rise the wood of Birnam. And our high place Macbeth shall live the lease of nature, pay his breath to time and mortal custom. Yet my heart throbs to know one thing. Tell me if you art, can you tell me such? Shall Banquo's issue ever reign in this kingdom? The witches have told Macbeth that until great Birnam wood that surrounds his castle on Dunsinane Hill walks up the hill and tries to smash the castle down, Macbeth is fine. And so Macbeth says basically here in this piece, well then I don't need to worry about anything. Macduff can live, everything's cool, I'll live a long life, not worried, because the forest can never march. The trouble is, the forest does march. Macduff was somebody to worry about. In the story, Macduff does in the end kill Macbeth. He allows the trees to march by chopping them down. He cuts them off from their roots, and his soldiers carry great branches of Birnam wood up the hill of Dunsinane. And no man of woman born shall harm Macbeth. What is that? Surely everybody on this earth is born of a woman. True. Even Macduff. But Macduff was born of a caesarean section, cut from his mother's womb, not born through her body. He thus is no man of woman born. Woman made, woman created, sure enough, but woman born, no. The point is that these things are open to interpretation. Nothing the witches said was wrong. What was wrong was Macbeth's belief that he had interpreted it correctly. Just like in the previous act where Banquo, Macbeth's great friend, says, and I believe, and this is off the top of my head, "Speak, you insane speakers, I charge thee, for I neither beg nor fear your favour or your hate. If you can see into the grain of time and say which seed shall grow and which shall not, speak unto me, I charge thee." And the witches say, lesser than Macbeth, but greater. Not so happy, yet happier. And thou shalt not be king, though thou be none. Thou shalt not get kings, though thou be none. Essentially, you will not be a king yourself, but your children will be kings. You will be happier than Macbeth, but not as happy as him yourself. There are other bits and twists, and then I would just add this. Not necessarily on the term of prediction, but on the point of misinterpretation. When a medium works spiritually through clairvoyance, clairaudience, clairsentience, these things are open to interpretation as well. One image can mean 1,000 words, and let's just remember, one word can mean 1,000 things. You saw the other day, if you follow my Facebook, how I said there are very many different ways to use the word shit. There's also many ways and forms to use the word fuck. It takes great intelligence to make that word into 1,000 meanings. But imagine a spirit comes and says, I am sorry. And the medium says, they are sorry. And the sitter says, well, they have nothing to be sorry for. And the medium says, but they are just saying sorry. Sorry is a really big word. I did a play many years ago, Return to the Forbidden Planet, and I'll just give you a quote from it. Sorry, meaning noun, adjective, apologetic, sympathetic, full of grief or sorrow, compunctious, conscientious, smitten, curse one's folly, lament, repent, dismal or pining, expressing pity, pained at heart, vile, mean, poor, of little account or value. Noun, sorriness, adverb, sorrily, comparative, sorrier, superlative, sorriest. In other words, sorry. There are nearly 60 different meanings of the word sorry. You just say, sorry. Well, sorry in what sense? Is somebody in a sorry state? Are you sorry for what you have done? Is such a thing a sad affair? Is somebody looking down and miserable and sorry for themselves? Are they a pitiful thing to look upon? It's complicated. It's open to interpretation. I personally, as an individual, not a member of the Spiritualist Union, although I am, as an individual, I don't see a great lot of problems with predictions. The trouble is that predictions then take us under the Trading Standards Act, and what we promise to happen or infer will happen can be held against us in a court of law, because we have offered something that we may not have the power to prove. That's my thoughts. Predictions. We should. I believe there is no harm, no great harm in making predictions, providing you work from a place of personal responsibility, providing you work ethically. You're not going to predict to a pregnant lady that she's going to have a miscarriage, because if you did, you'd just be a vile human being. Even if that is what you saw, some things should be kept to yourself. You know, I have seen that a few times, where I've looked into a message and seen a pregnancy and seen that pregnancy will not come about. But it is not my business to go and tell somebody that they're going to lose a child. It's not my business to tell them to put them through that pain, because you don't know what you are doing in this prediction. You know, your prediction of the future could alter the future itself. But yeah, I would just say, you know, we predict the future all the time. And it's silly to say that we don't. It's silly to infer that we don't. It's a misnomer. Stand there go, I'm not allowed to predict, but watch for a wedding. It's prediction of the future, unfortunately. The trouble is, true prediction of the future is difficult, because the words of the Spirit are usually incredibly literal. Incredibly literal. But when you look at them, you think, what on God's earth does that mean? Until you see it, and then you understand it. I refer to events of the recent past and trying to do some particular work, asking the Spirit, what do I need to see? You need to see a flight of birds, a door with roses. You need to see a green car on the opposite side of the road. You need to find my name and turn right into the sun. Find me a shell in a strange place. Look for me behind the back of a pig. Find me where your dog is stood. Find me behind the house made of white feathers. On the day you find me, you will hear a dead rabbit sing. Hear a dead rabbit sing? How can you hear a dead rabbit sing? Bright eyes, burning like fire. Watership down when a dead rabbit sings. All strange, all very, very literal, all wildly open to misinterpretation. Just like ancient Cassandra and the Oracle of Delphi and the Syllabine oracles of ancient Rome, what we see, like Nostradamus, what we see when looking back, thanks to Captain Hindsight, is incredibly accurate and very much what you have looked for and saw. COVID. I'll just say this. How many mediums, I know I did, just before COVID came, myself, a friend of mine who's also a spiritualist, a couple of other people, the bats. Beware the bats. The bats will take away your breath. Nothing. Nonsense. The bats will take away your breath. What the bloody hell are you talking about, people? But then, just by magic, when you look back, you see those bats, see that can't breathe. Made sense. Made massive sense. But to us at the time, no. They said to me there will be a war amongst the sunflowers in the early spring. Well, sunflowers don't fight very often. Unless the national flower of a particular country is a sunflower. And then it makes sense. The idea being that predictions are all well and good, but you have to be very, very careful making them, because what you say is usually held to the letter, but have you read it, seen it, interpreted it correctly? It's very unlikely. You know why? Because you'll probably overcomplicate it. You will try to make it into something it doesn't need to be, and then you get lost along the way. The prediction comes true, and what you thought it was and what it actually was bear very little resemblance to each other. When a dead rabbit sings, you will know what to do when a dead rabbit sings. And I just put this one. I went to a church a few days before a certain number of events over the past year, and a lady just said to me, you know what you are doing, you know where you are going, and you will know it by the singing of this song. And I went, go on. Around her neck she wore a yellow ribbon. She wore it in December and through the month of May. And if you asked her why the heck she wore it for her lover who was in the cavalry. Around her neck she wore a yellow ribbon. I was like, when am I going to hear that? I didn't hear it. I saw it. And when I saw it, I knew what it was. But the lady said I would hear it by the singing of a song. I didn't hear no song sang. I saw a yellow ribbon appear that very next day, and knew that in the days to come what would be asked is what needed to be done. These things are mystifying, but they are wonderful. And I just finished this ramble with, the Lord works in mysterious ways his wonders to perform.